Hey there. Today we're going to do something a little different. We're going to talk about a wild edible. Now I don't usually do that with my channel. In fact, this will be the very first one that we do. I don't consider myself an expert with wild edibles. There are a few that I know how to identify them, I know their use, I know how to harvest them, and I know how to eat them. But today we're going to try one. We're going to try the Staghorn Sumac. Now we're going to go over here and I'm going to show you, because of the location where I found it, there's some background noise. Hopefully that won't be picked up by the camera. But we're going to head over here where there's a nice tree with some berries on it, and I'll show you what they look like, and then we'll talk about harvesting them and then using them for something. Okay, so hang on. All right, so here's the tree up behind me. It's a very distinct shape, and the red berries, you'll be able to see them pretty plainly. I'll show you, I'm going to zoom in here, but we're also, when we harvest them, I'll show you a close-up of what they look like also. So let me zoom in here on that tree so you can have a better look at it. Okay, so kind of have to walk up the bank here to be able to get some of those. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to leave the camera down here at the bottom. I don't want to carry it up there. So when I get back, I'll do a close-up of the actual berries. Now on this tree up here, I probably see maybe 6 or 7 berry clusters. I would probably collect 2, but probably no more than 3 from this, because we don't want to take away all of the seeds off of the one tree. So what I would do is get a few of them what I need off of this one. Then there is actually one right next to it, so I'm probably going to grab a few off of that one too. So what we're looking for, depending on how big of a batch that we want to collect, we're going to collect maybe 8 to 12 bunches of the berries. And you'll see they're actually all hooked together when we snap the stem off, that we're actually going to snap off a bunch of the berries, not just an individual berry. So I'm going to move the camera down here a little bit, so maybe you can see me a little better going up there, and then I'm going to head up and harvest a few of them. Before I do that, so depending on what I'm out harvesting, to be honest, what I like to use, just some garden shears like this. They're real easy to keep with you, and when you're doing it, I don't have to worry about chopping things, cutting things. I just put these on, snip, and I can get a chunk off there. I use these quite frequently depending on whatever I'm harvesting out there. So, okay, I'm going to go up and get some off this tree. So from this distance and angle, it's probably going to be a little hard for you to see what I'm doing. But basically what I'm doing is I'm going to pull down some of the branches, I'm going to snip a bunch of the berries off, and then I'm going to go over to the other tree, grab a few over there, and then I'll give you a close-up when I get down there. Depending on how tall the tree is, a lot of times with these, you're actually going to have to bend it over to be able to reach a cluster of berries. If your goal is to not destroy the tree, you're going to be careful because they're not a very strong tree and the branches snap pretty easily. As evidenced by that. So I'm going to make my way over. I'm going to grab a few more off this other tree over here. Well, before I head over there, grab a few more, show you a close-up here what the berry bunches look like. So what we're looking at, like I said, when you get up close and look at these, there's actually a whole bunch of individual little berries attached onto this clump. And what we did was we cut it off here at the stalk, and we were able to collect this whole clump. Now you'll notice when you cut it off that it does have a white sap coming out of it. That's okay. It's a lot of when I was growing up, a lot of people always went around telling me that this was poison, sumac, but it's really not. That has like a white berries on it. So this is a Staghorn sumac, and it's perfectly fine. And as we're going to see, we're going to use the berries here. So I'm going to shut the camera off for a little bit so I can go up here, grab a few more off of that other tree so that we have enough for what we're going to make. All right, so here we are back at the truck. What I did was one of them, I actually I cut the berry bunch off and left the leaves on so that you could get a little better look at what it would look like when it was on the tree. Like I said, it's a common misconception to think that this is poison sumac when it's really not. And in fact, you also might hear people call it sumac or shumac. You know, around my area here, we have a tendency to just make up our own pronunciations for words. So I grew up, we always called it shumac. But if you look at the spelling, it actually sounds like it should be more sumac. So, but either way, whenever someone's talking about that, it's what they're talking about. If we're talking about Staghorn Sumac, it is it's an edible that we can make something out of. If they're talking about poison sumac, stay away from that. That's bad. So, what we're going to do is we're not going to actually eat these. What we're going to do is we're going to make a drink out of them. So we're going to make some sumac tea, which is funny because you can call it tea, but when it's done, it's actually going to taste a lot like pink lemonade. So what I have here, I just picked up, you know, like one of those iced tea containers. A lot of times what I'll use is actually an empty ice cream bucket, like one of those plastic ice cream buckets with the lid and the handle. They make that nice one if you want to make a big batch of it. I think this will work great for what we're going to do here. So what we're going to do, I'm going to take the lid off of this. Now, one thing really important that you have to remember is don't rinse off these berry branches, because if you rinse them off, all you're doing is rinsing the flavor away. So we do not want to rinse these before we make our tea out of them. Now, I'm going to take some of the bunches that I got out of here, and honestly, I'm just going to put them down in here. Now, if you want, one time I did go and I took my snippers and I cut off each of these little individual pieces. What that did was it actually let me fit a lot more in my container, but it was a lot more time consuming too. I also think that I ended up with less of the sap because as you can see, this is even, you know, this is even kind of a bigger bunch. There's multiple berries on there, but the stem is a lot smaller, so that white sap that comes out, they wouldn't have as much in there. I've never really noticed that to give it, you know, a bad flavor or anything, so I don't really think you have to worry about that. So now this one, as I'm looking at it, it doesn't actually look all that good. You know, inside here, there's a lot of dried stuff. So, and you can see that it actually looks like it's starting to rot here, and it's very brown. So this piece here, I'm actually just going to chuck. I don't inspect them over too much, but I do look for like brown and rotting spots on it. As you can see here, this is a very bright red. This is a great look for it to have whenever it's just right for making our tea. Now, I kind of procrastinated on this video, put it off for a little while. So what happened was it's actually a little late in the season. I should have actually made these a little sooner here. And then the berries would have been nicer. They would have been a lot brighter red. But what I'm going to do, so if I'm using, normally when I'm using my ice cream bucket, I'm going to put, I can fit, you know, 10 or 12 of these bunches into an ice cream bucket. Here what I'm going to do is I'm just going to kind of cram in what I can. Also, some people I know will actually take these and kind of crush them before they put them in. I think if we let this steep long enough that we're not going to have to worry too much about that. That would actually, you know, it'll release some of more of, you know, the juices and the flavor out of it, especially if you don't want to let it sit too long. So here you go. I have it kind of packed full. I can keep putting some more in there if I want. But what I'm going to do, since we're out here in the field and I didn't have any running water, I brought a jug of water with me. But what we're going to do is we're going to put some cold water onto this. Now, I know some people also make this with hot water, make a hot tea. I've never tried it that way. I've only tried it with cold, as if it was like pink lemonade. So what we're going to do is we're just going to fill this up. Like I said, just remember, do not rinse them off. I know probably some of you are thinking that, you know, this is full of bugs and dirt and grime and whatever else. It is. I mean, I didn't go to the grocery store and get this. I went over there, you know, on the bank and I picked it off of a tree. You're gonna have that whenever you find this stuff. When we're all done, we'll do a little bit of filtering on this, and depending on what you want to do, you can even run it through a coffee filter if you want, if you're really worried about the material that's inside of this. Now what I'm going to do, I'm just going to put this lid on here. One of the reasons I like the ice cream bucket is because I can just put that lid on, and every now and then I'm just going to go and shake it. So I'm just going to take this, I'm just going to shake this up. You see it leaks a little bit out of this container, where if I had an ice cream bucket with the lid on, I'd be able to just shake this thing up. Now, what I'm going to do is, I think, in my opinion, the longer you let this sit, the stronger the tea is going to be. If you're only going to let it sit, you know, maybe an hour or two, I think you can probably just leave it out on the counter. You know, a lot of times I'll like leave this sit overnight, so I'll put it in the fridge and let it sit. Every now and then, you know, whenever I think of it, I'll come in, I'll just grab this and I'll just shake it up. What I want to do is I want to get that flavor out of these bunch of berries and get it into the water. So now, I don't know if you can tell from there. I can tell from here, but it's already getting kind of dark in there. And you see, when we let this sit, it's going to get a little bit. It's going to get a little bit darker. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to actually let this sit for a little while, and in fact, I'm actually going to pack up and head home. So what we'll do is a little bit later, we'll come back and revisit this, and we'll have a look at it. We'll see, you know, how it has changed. You know, how the darkness of it, of the water that's in there. Hopefully it shows up on the camera just how flavorful that looks already. So, okay, well, we'll be back at you in just a little bit here after we let this sit.
2 hours later.
All right, here we are. It's about 2 hours now. I've put this in the refrigerator, shook it up probably, you know, 3 or 4 times. I'll give it one last shake. Like I said, with this kind of container, it's a little hard to keep it from leaking out. But one of the reasons I wanted to make it in this was to show you. So the one I picked up has these slots cut in it for pouring, and I think that's going to work really well for this. It's going to stop those bigger pieces from coming out, but still going to let the tea come out. So, like I said, I had it in the fridge, mostly because I'm going to be drinking this, and I wanted it to be cold. But I don't know if you can really tell. It's gotten a little later in the day, so the sun's not shining through it as well. But you might be able to see here once I pour it out. So if you can tell, there really aren't a lot of big chunks in there. A few small things floating around. That's okay. Like I said, if you really want it to be nothing else in it, go ahead and run it through a coffee filter, or even just one of your, you know, household strainers. You know, occasionally, you know, you're going to end up that there were bugs living in that or whatever. You can filter them out, or you can leave them in and, you know, add a little protein to your drink too. So like I said, it's got a very tart taste, especially depending on how long you let it sit and how ripe the berries are. But it really gives you the idea that you're drinking pink lemonade. If you want, you can sweeten this. Use a little sugar, a little honey, whatever kind of sweetener that you like in this. Like I said, it got pretty dark for just being 2 hours. What I might do, I might put this back in the fridge, let it sit overnight, and come back and shoot a little addendum to this video. No guarantees though, because this actually is pretty tasty, so I may end up just drinking it all tonight.